Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Kickstart with Kayla. I'm your host, Kayla Farner, and I am so excited that you are here with me this week. If you haven't connected with me already, be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Kickstart with Kayla. Or if you have any inquiries, you can email me at kickstartwithkayla@gmail.com. Guys, I'm so excited for this week's episode. This has been in planning for a while now, but I actually have a very special guest with me this week, my aunt, Angela Halloran-Smith.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of
It's an
course.
absolute honor to be doing this.
Yes.
Super excited.
No, I'm very excited. I'm currently home for Thanksgiving break, so I thought this would be perfect timing to meet up and do this.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and one thing I don't know if anyone knows this that listens, but one thing that makes my podcast very special and honestly has been a big reason for why I continue to be consistent is every single Monday I receive an email from my aunt just giving me her feedback on the episode and just some really good stuff. And so I wake up to those emails. So it really does make my week.
Well, I'll have to say this podcast has been absolutely amazing, and it's made such a huge difference the way I start my weeks, and I look forward to it now, like, every Monday morning. It's like how I start my day. I get my earbuds and stuff, and, I start it, and while I'm getting ready for work, I listen to the podcast and everything, and I will have to say it just makes a huge difference in my perspective throughout the week, and sometimes if I'm really struggling throughout the week, like, I'll listen to it a second time,
Mm.
like, I'll just cut it on and, have it on in the car while I'm driving to work and everything, and it just sorta helps me sort things out, throughout the week, and especially if I'm dealing with some really, heavy challenges, which, does happen,
Oh, yeah.
it just makes a super difference, so I certainly wanna thank all of your, previous guests as well that, there've been I can even say, like, there's been great little tidbits from each podcast that have just stuck in my brain and that I continue to just sort of refer back to and everything like that. So thank you to everybody that's been participating with this.
Well, thank you. I think one thing that I started praying about back in the summer is that I just want this to kind of be a way where, like, almost like my ministry, if you want to say. And so I I've just tried to make it a way is to say, okay, I'm learning all of this. Like, I want to share this knowledge with others. Like, God, just please allow this platform to do that. So that's really encouraging. And I was talking to my dad earlier today, like this is episode 19,
Oh, wow.
which is crazy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that we're about to hit 20, which I can't believe.
It's wonderful. Well, it definitely is your ministry. Like, there's no question about that. And I think the greatest thing that you brought out is that how people have very similar challenges
Mhm.
and in all different stages of life. And I think that's what's been so valuable to me is, you've had some of your friends on the podcast and stuff. And even as they're dealing with things that are, in their teenage years and stuff, you know, I still deal with in my later years, and I'll have to say it truly affects you the same. Whether you're a teenager or you're not, you still have the same emotions and the same things that you have to deal with and stuff. And it's true that no matter what age and stage you are in life, that you do learn something every day. And I will have to say that I've learned a lot with, listening to these every Monday morning, so they've been fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, you never stop learning.
No, you don't.
I wanted to start off and just kind of ask you a little bit if you could share a little bit of your story or testimony just for people that may not know you or your background.
Okay, well, sure. Well, so I have to say, like, growing up, um, your mom and I certainly went to church as children and everything like that. But I'm not going to lie to you. I typically fell asleep in the church pew. And, kind of like the, bribery to get us to go to church was that we were promised McDonald's after church. And so that was like the driving boys, like, hey, let's go to church, and we go to McDonald's afterwards. So, growing up and everything, that was kind of a little bit how, church was in my life. And then as I got older and everything like that, I'll be completely honest, like totally was away from the church, without doubt. But there certainly were people that were very grounded in the church that were around me, and I'm very much aware of that now that I'm, gotten older and everything, and, um and so there was influence in my life, but my own personal journey, like, had completely come to a halt, very much as I was sort of in my teenage years and in my 20s and probably a bit into my 30s and everything like that, and, I will have to say, though, truthfully, and this might be a little bit of a shock to you, is that really the person that started, getting close to God and started diving into their journey and everything was your mom.
Really?
And it was, and she started attending church and everything like that, and I'll be completely honest with you, I thought she had lost her mind, and, she was listening to worship music, on the radio and everything like that, and I was just like, "What are you doing?" But, I certainly did see a turn in her life and everything like that, which was amazing, and so, I was sorta on the outside looking in a little bit, and, throughout that time, I certainly was very much aware that God was sending me whispers, and just sorta trying to nudge me a little bit and that kinda thing and stuff like that, and then, as you know, if you do not listen to God's whispers, then He sends you a big old shout.
Yes, he does.
And I got a huge one, and I got a huge one in my late 20s, and it, changed my life, and, to this day, I can say it probably was the best thing that ever happened to
Mm.
me, but going through it, it wasn't, and, but it really did start me on my personal journey, and, because of that, I really had to dive in, um To towards God because I had no choice.
Yeah.
It was either run to me or I wasn't gonna make it, and I did. And, through going through that, time in my life, it did really start, me towards healing and to start learning a lot about myself, which I did. I probably learned more than I wanted to know, but I did. And, that pivotal moment started, like, probably at least a 10-year period, where I really started, looking into my life and receiving quite a bit of counseling and things like that, and, after about 10 years, I was sort of functioning in society properly somewhat, but yet at the same note, my whole life coming together was still, like, right at my fingertips, but it wasn't completely coming together, and, I'll never forget, I had really enjoyed going to, like, this big, huge mega church, and I absolutely loved it because I could go there by myself, and I could just get lost in the crowd, and I could just go and just sit down and just listen. And, I'll never forget one day, um, in fact, a girlfriend of mine that I'd made through the church and stuff, she called me, she had gone to the early service, and she's like, "You're not gonna believe the service today, get ready. It's so amazing, it's really powerful, just get ready." And so I went, and without even knowing about it and stuff, I ended up sitting actually next to the preacher's wife.
Oh.
And I had no idea, just randomly sitting, and, the service was incredible, and it really started with the first thing he said was, he said, "I wanna reach out to all of you who there is just something in your life right now that is just not right." And he said, "And for all of you that that's going on, please stand up." And I stood up so fast. I mean, like, jumped out of my seat and stood up so fast. And, the service went on and everything, and at the end of it and stuff, to all the people that were standing and all, people prayed for us and put their hands on us and prayed for us and stuff, and I will never forget remembering, I was like, "Gosh, I'm extremely lucky that I actually get the preacher's wife to actually be praying over me and stuff." And that started, like, another level of my journey, and I actually got really involved, in a ministry there. And, that started a lot of healing for me, and I was a part of that ministry for, like, a year, and then after that year, I was asked to be, a leader of that ministry, which I actually did do, and that was amazing, and that actually, took my healing to a whole nother level, which I, couldn't have even imagined, and so when I started getting involved with that ministry and everything, then my life really started to turn, and, throughout the journey and everything, of course, there were little miracles along the way, but then with being a part of that ministry and everything, then I probably got one of the biggest miracles, of my life that happened during that time, and part of that was my husband, my now husband, walking into my life, after him and I had just dated 20 years prior, and he walked into my life, and, that started that whole part of my life and everything, and that was without question God. Um, and, so, that sort of started to feel like that my life was finally starting to all come together, like I finally had a little bit of the missing link and that kinda thing. And so, I continued to stay, you know, diving into my journey with God and everything like that, and truly enjoyed going to church regularly and that kinda thing, and then I got married, and I moved to another country, and, but at the same note, like, I knew that that was all God, and I was supposed to do that because, my husband was, somebody that I dated 20 years, prior, and he was, you know he was the man that I spotted from across the room and just took my breath away before we even met. Like, I admired him from afar. And, the fact then that we met and everything, that was all God, taking care of that and everything. And then, we dated for a little while, and then from extenuating circumstances and stuff, we parted ways. And then the fact he came back into my life 20 years later.
True sign from God.
Yes,
Yeah.
without question, and, so I knew I was definitely supposed to be moving and all that kinda stuff, but it wasn't easy to be leaving my home and my family and everything that I knew, but I knew that it was what I was supposed to do, and then, starting my whole new life in a new country and stuff, but I did know that I needed to continue my, journey with God, and so I did go to, the church there for a while, and it's a little bit of an adjustment for me because it was a very traditional church, and so I was used to going to the big, huge mega church that I loved, and then I was going to a very traditional church.
Mm.
Um, so that was a kinda little bit of an adjustment and everything, and, but the thing that sorta kept me going there and stuff is that I actually would take my father-in-law, and, oddly enough, he was sort of the strongest sort of, faith person in my husband's family and stuff, and that was something that him and I shared, and that was kinda special, it was our time together. I would take him to church and stuff, and then, sadly, my father-in-law's health declined, and he wasn't going as much, but I did keep going a little bit, but then my father-in-law passed, and that was really hard, and, I just sort of lost touch with it all, and, then oddly enough, COVID hit,
Mhm.
and, then where I was, the country where I was, like, everything shut down, like, truthfully, and I mean, like, we couldn't even go to the grocery store, but on certain days and that kinda stuff, so there you are sorta stuck in your house without any choice, and so I started diving into the internet looking for things and stuff, and there I really found, a great church through online, and I absolutely loved it. It was, like, such a huge relief. It was like going on the greatest date every week. Like, just, getting online and listening to it, and the music was absolutely incredible, and the best part about it too was sometimes, I mean, I would just cry, and sometimes it's just the greatest thing to just cry and to just release it and everything, and so that sort of helped get me through that time, and, then there was another huge miracle that God put into my life that sort of brought me back over, to the States, and, with all that and me sort of walking through this door, I knew that God had to be at the center of all of it because, once again, was leaving my home, leaving my family, and also to go in directly into uncharted waters on many different levels. And, if I'm sure looking from the outside in, you thought it was completely crazy and, didn't have it all figured out by any means. But here I still am, and it's all still working out great. And so, with that as well, then the opportunity came for me to be baptized.
Mhm.
And so that was something that I definitely wanted to do because I just wanted to sort of draw closer to God because if anything, I knew I have to have him. I have to have him in order to sort of be accomplishing these goals that I have set before me. He
Mhm.
has to be there. And so I did that. And that was another great release to just sort of try and leave the insecurity and the feeling of not being good enough. It's just finally in my life try to let that go. And that certainly is easier said than done, but it's better. And so then, that was a year ago, and so then with that, then I've just tried to regularly, just, find time to be with God, and now I do it, very much on a regular basis, and I think I've shared with you, sometimes it's while I'm driving in my car, you know, and, I certainly find myself praying about a lot more things, because I do know as well that I definitely want His will and not mine, and, that has brought me, some great success that I'm extremely grateful for. And I know moving forward as well that he has to be a part of all of this.
Wow.
So
Wow, no, that's really inspiring, that's incredible, and I think, one thing that's been oh, you're really cried too. One thing that's been really evident, since you've been here for the past few years is just how much you keep God center in your life, like, it's really inspiring, and, like, it's really helped with my faith too, just making sure, like, whatever God has for me, like, that's the will for me, that's the path I need to take, and that you've done so much where you have taken so many leaps of faith. Like, just your whole career, like, it's incredible the things that you've accomplished, but also the challenges you've faced and that you've overcome, and I think when God makes those pivots in your life or he calls you to do something, 9 times out of 10, it's something where you're like, "That's really scary. I don't wanna do that because I'm comfortable in what I have now." And but I think it's really important to just understand that when God is calling you to those things, He understands that you're scared about it, that you're comfortable in what you have, but we don't know that what He has is so much better for us. He wants us to step out of our box and to take on what He has planned for us. He never told us we were going to be comfortable throughout our life, and I think in order to really find Him and to grow our faith in our relationship with Him, we need to be uncomfortable.
absolutely, and it's so true. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
There's no question about that. And it's very hard to go against the grain and to continually go against it and to be doing something that people aren't familiar with. That's extremely hard because, even the people that are the closest to you, they do want the best for you. And I certainly understand that. Um, but at the same note, their best for you is, not your best.
Right.
And, so that's not easy. And, when you have outside sources that are basically telling you everything not to do, but yet it's just so inside of you. And that's, I have to say the thing that God has really done for me is how strong He has just put this desire in me. Can't explain it. Um, have no clue how it's all gonna work out. Have absolutely none. But yet at the same note too, I think the strongest thing for me was it was more not can you do it, it was more how can I not do it?
Mhm.
That I was going to regret it worse to not do it. And that even if I failed and fell flat on my face, it was gonna be far better than staying in the comfort zone and continuing to be doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it has always just sort of been inside of me to just try and do more, try and do better. Um, Even when I didn't have the resources, all these things is to just have that inside of me to always be, sort of motivating me to make the decisions that I've made. So, there's no question that God has had his hand in all of it, absolutely all of it. And I will have to say, even when I didn't have such a strong faith, like I clearly could see God's hand in my life. And I think that's what so amazes me to this day that even when my faith was not strong and I was doing things I should not have been doing, that God was very much there. And he was very much watching over me and protecting me and everything like that, and definitely guiding me, um, you know, in the direction that he wanted me to go. And, you know, I still don't have it all figured out, but at the same note, too, I'm doing A-okay so far, and that's also, too, a little bit struggle is, you will have people in your life that, love spreadsheets and have it all sorted out, a little bit the church sermon that we heard today.
Yes.
And, you know, I've been a little bit the complete opposite, and of course, my husband's very supportive and everything, but at the same note, like, he had all the big questions, of X, Y, and Z and all this and that, and it was like, I don't have an answer, but alls I do know is I've gotta take the first step,
Yeah.
and, that was without question, and then just sorta take it off from there, and it was a little bit the same thing with getting married to him. It was a little bit he didn't have all this figured out, like us. It was all a little bit of a, uh, sorta, you know, do what you can kinda thing and stuff, but that's all worked out fantastic and everything, so, sometimes not having all the answers is great, because then you don't have the expectations and that kinda thing, and then you do really have to just lean in and trust God, completely, and, so, that actually can really be a blessing.
Yeah, because when you have all the answers, there's really no room for faith, which
Exactly.
is why God doesn't want us to know everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, oh, I think too, the more you understand that God is present throughout your life, the more where things happen where you feel this calling and you know it's from him. Like, that's not from yourself. That's not from the world. Like, that is God calling you to do something and kind of like what you were saying earlier, because I've had this experience as well, and I definitely had this when I was being called to go back to church after 3 years, is that God will plant this little whisper in your head. He'll give you this little nudge, and the more that you say, "No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna forget about that," then the louder he's going to be until finally you just have to say, "Okay, I'm here, God. Like, just enter my life. Do what you need to do." Which I think can be really powerful, and I think that definitely just creates the foundation for that pivot God wants you to take in life.
Well, and it's extremely true that your worst day with God is far better than your best day without him. There's no question about that, none whatsoever. And, I constantly remind myself of that, when things are really tough and struggling and all that kind of stuff. And, and also too, like I'm still just an all, um, God can bring things into your lives and do the greatest miracles in the most unexpected ways,
For sure.
and, I remember praying for a miracle that just happened to me this past week.
Oh.
And it all came in such an unexpected way. And, after I had prayed for it, and, I prayed for this probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, actually. And not too long after that, I actually remember listening to a sermon, when I was listening to church online and stuff, and the service was actually about and it was like, "God will bring you your miracle in unexpected packages." don't be looking for, exactly how you think it's supposed to come. Be open to it being the total opposite. And, um, and that's been so true. It really has been true. And I will have to say, the miracle, well, it's far greater than I could imagine.
Yeah, I often reflect on my life and just think, like, the path that I had planned for myself, I'm just so thankful it didn't happen. Because what I all every sort of miracle God's placed in my life, every sort of opportunity He's given me has just been, 1, something I didn't expect, but 2, just so much better. And I wish more people realize that when you do say yes to God, He will provide you with abundance in so many things that you can't even imagine. Like that's gonna happen to your life. That like God's gonna give you all of those things. He's gonna reap all of these fruits and I wish more people understood that.
Yeah, well, and I think it's very true that the best way to sort of get that across to people is to just live by example. Yes. And it's a little bit like I was talking about, like with your mom. She just, showed me and everything. Wasn't that she did anything out of the ordinary or whatever, but just watching her. And another thing too that's so true is you never know who's watching.
No.
You really don't. And truly, sometimes the greatest exposure people have to God or to the Bible or whatever is your life.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget, actually, when I was getting married and everything, the preacher who was doing our service and stuff, he asked me, he said, is there anything that you would like to sort of get across, through your wedding ceremony? He said, I like to do like just a little sort of sermon and that kinda thing, and I just knew there was no question. I said, "I want you to talk about the power of miracles." And I said, because us getting married is a miracle, and, if there's gonna be anything that people will actually, take away from that, is I really think that would be powerful, and it is. It's just trying to live by example, and, while I was living in another country and stuff, God put me in sort of a workplace and everything like that, that faith was not strong among people and that kinda thing, and it was, I sorta got looked down upon because of my faith and stuff like that, and if there were ever opportunities for people to sort of like, take digs at me about it or something like that, those were taken, and, I knew though that I just had to stay true to myself and to my own, journey and stuff, and I will have to say it was amazing how some people would start to turn a little bit, and, with living like that though, it was amazing the respect that I actually earned and received, and, that was extremely powerful and really great. And, but it's not easy,
Mm-mm.
and being different certainly scares people. There's no question about that, but, you know, I'll have to say, and that's not so easy also too as you're growing up and you're a teenager and you want to have lots of friends and all that kind of thing. But I will have to say, like, standing outside of the crowd is far better.
It is,
It
and
is
I
far better.
I'm experiencing that a lot right now with being in college,
Sure.
like, I've especially this past semester, I've gotten really involved in a new church and part of the campus ministry, and I've just been doing a lot of that. I joined a fellows program, um, and I've noticed, like, my friends that aren't involved in stuff are just not very strong in their faith. They kinda just question what I'm doing. Like, when I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't go to dinner tonight. I have this," they're like, "Oh, why?" "Oh, I have my fellows program." "Oh, okay." And it's just kind of like I love my life and my relationship with God, like, that is far more important than whatever opinion somebody has over what I'm doing, and I just pray that people see that And I've already had people come start to ask me questions about God, and it's people that have never once batted an eye at anything I've done, and it's been really powerful, but too, it's almost been a little bit it's kind of funny. One time, this is quite recent, I was at lunch and my friends are talking about their weekends, like, "Oh, I'm so tired, like, it's been stressful, like, I just wanna take a nap," and I was just like, "I mean, I'm tired too, but I'm honestly doing pretty good," and one of my friends was like, "Kayla, you're always doing good," and it's like, "Well,
That's great.
no, I'm not always doing good, it's just whenever I have an issue, like, I literally tell myself, like, "Not my problem, it's God's."
That's right.
And I just am like, "Alright, God, take over, like, not my problem to stress over." And so I think that's just made my perspective better when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, I will have to say, like, I'm, just in awe of yours and your sisters as well, just how strong your faith is at your age,
Mhm.
you know? Um, it's just incredible. And both of you inspire me every day. And, the impact that you're both having, you know, uh, it's not just amongst your peers and everything like that. It goes much, further and, you guys are just so incredible and, you're so much more centered and, secure within yourself than, I ever was at your age and everything like that, and, that's just amazing, and it's true, you do, both of you do, you inspire me every day to be a better version of myself.
Will you do the same to us? I think this is a good place to wrap up, but thank you so much for coming on here and talking to me. This is probably one of my favorite episodes we've done, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Well, guys, I hope this helped kickstart your week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.